On June 29, 2008, in the town of Abita Springs, St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, the emergency dispatcher received a call at 5:51 a.m. A man claiming to be the husband reported he had returned home after a night shift and found his wife unresponsive. Officers from the local department and paramedics were dispatched to a residence on Watts Road in a quiet suburban neighborhood. They entered the home and discovered a woman lying in the entryway, lifeless. Medical personnel pronounced her dead before the police had completed their arrival. On the back of her head was a gunshot wound from very close range, and a 9mm shell casing lay on the floor nearby. Thus began the investigation that would upend the understanding of what occurred in this calm home on the outskirts of Abita Springs. Once the victim was identified, investigators turned to examining her past. The woman, Christa Ann Baker, was born November 27, 1983, in Laurel, Mississippi. She grew up in a devout family. Her father, Winfred, served as a pastor, and her mother, Patty Ann, supported his ministry. Christa was the youngest child in the family, with 2 older brothers. In 1991, the family moved to Abita Springs, Louisiana, where Christa's parents founded their own church and a missionary outreach. From her earliest years, Christa participated in the life of the congregation. She helped with youth programs, organized gatherings, and later accompanied her parents on domestic and overseas missionary trips. After completing homeschooling, she enrolled in an online Christian education program at the Tennessee Bible Institute. At the same time, she remained actively involved in missionary work, participating in 17 trips, mostly focused on assisting young boys and girls. Those who knew Christa described her as a quiet, composed person who always put service to others above her own interests. She actively engaged in church activities, organized youth meetings, helped prepare Sunday services, and supported charitable projects. Christa held strong religious convictions, raised in a family where discipline and morality were valued. She spoke openly about the importance of abstaining until marriage, and believed relationships should be built with the aim of starting a family. Despite this, Christa was sociable, had many acquaintances, but always clearly separated her personal life from her spiritual values. Her friends recalled her remarks about wanting to start a family, but said she wasn't rushing into it, waiting instead for spiritual readiness. Dreams of a home and children were secondary to her faith, which took priority. These details painted a clear portrait. A young woman who came of age in a setting of religious rigor, deeply attached to family and church, whose life was rooted in honesty and discipline. For investigators, this sharp contrast between her established way of life and the circumstances of her death became the first alarming signal. Christa met Cy Alexander at church, where he was a regular at youth gatherings. Both were active in the congregation. She led programs for the younger attendees, and he helped organize trips and events for the parish. At first, their interactions were limited to church duties and mission work. Over time, a bond of trust grew between them. Christa saw Cy as someone who shared her beliefs and commitment to faith. He came across as attentive, calm, and dependable. Christa's parents, Winfred and Patty Ann, knew Alexander from church and held a positive opinion of him. Their families were friendly, so no one questioned the beginnings of their relationship. Cy was a year younger than Christa and studying to become a paramedic. At the time, he was completing his training with a local emergency services unit. Despite a busy schedule, he remained active in church programs. In a community where service was central to life, this made him a respected presence. Their relationship developed gradually, in line with the values of their church. Traditions were important to them, and they were committed to maintaining boundaries until marriage. Friends recall Christa saying she wanted her first kiss to happen on her wedding day. After years of friendship, Cy approached Christa's father to ask for permission to propose. Winfred Baker gave his blessing, seeing in the young man someone who embraced the same family values. The engagement was modest, without public fanfare. Wedding preparations took a few months. Christa continued helping at church while planning their future. Cy was finishing school and securing a job with the emergency response team. On March 1st, 2008, they were married in the church built by her parents. The ceremony was attended by family, fellow parishioners, and close friends. For Christa, it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream, to build a family grounded in faith and mutual respect. According to those present, the wedding was simple but heartfelt. The couple looked genuinely happy. After the ceremony, they moved into a rented home not far from the church, ready to start their new life together. Christa took Cy's last name. Friends and relatives noted that she seemed peaceful and confident, often speaking about their plans for the future, thoughts of starting a family, and dreams of working side by side with her husband. It appeared she had found the life she'd always envisioned. But just 4 months later, that same home would become the center of one of the most controversial investigations in St. Tammany Parish. After the initial response, crime scene specialists began carefully documenting the location. Christa's body was found face down. Forensic experts recorded a single gunshot wound to the back of her head. The nature of the injury indicated a close-range shot, with visible soot and skin burns surrounding the entry point. The fatality was immediate. A 9mm shell casing was found near the body, but no firearm was recovered at the scene. Investigators, a crime scene photographer, and a ballistics expert were all present. As the home was examined, a report was filed. There were no signs of a struggle, and the surroundings appeared largely undisturbed. The kitchen was spotless. Dishes were clean, everything in its place. The bedroom showed no signs of disturbance. The bed was neatly made. But the living room told a different story. Drawers left open, boxes overturned, and a jewelry box lying open on the bed. Oddly, nothing of real value had been taken. Gold, cash, electronics, they were all still there. Christa's purse sat on the kitchen table, untouched, with money and bank cards inside. Investigators quickly noticed a strange inconsistency, signs of chaos, but no evidence of forced entry. The door locks were intact. Windows were shut. No marks on the door frames. No unfamiliar shoe prints. Only those belonging to the couple were found. It all suggested that someone had tried to stage a break-in. Officers canvassed the neighborhood. No one heard any sounds of a struggle or anything that resembled a gunshot. One neighbor mentioned not seeing any unusual vehicles around that night. The initial conclusion: this was a setup, a scene crafted to look like a frantic search for valuables but without the motive of theft. By this point, investigators had only one confirmed fact. The emergency call came from the victim's husband. His presence at the scene was explained by his return from a night shift. But certain aspects of his account raised red flags. He became the starting point for deeper questioning and background checks. After documenting the scene, detectives turned their attention to Christa's husband. Cy Alexander was a 24-year-old paramedic with Acadian Ambulance Service. On the night of June 28th to 29th, he'd been scheduled for duty. His colleagues and internal shift logs confirmed his presence at work. During the initial interview, Alexander stated that he left for work around 5 p.m. The night, he said, was relatively quiet, with only a few emergency calls. He claimed he tried reaching out to Christa multiple times, but she didn't answer, and the texts he sent after midnight went unanswered. He figured she had gone to sleep early. When he returned home the next morning, he said he found the front door slightly open and the house in disarray. That's when he discovered his wife in the entryway. After checking for a pulse and realizing she was gone, he contacted emergency services. Throughout questioning, Cy remained emotionally restrained. His tears came briefly, then faded into calmness. Investigators took note of his composure. an unusual response for someone facing the sudden loss of a loved one. He mentioned that 2 firearms, a rifle and a shotgun, were missing from their gun cabinet, along with a DVD player. However, valuables like jewelry and cash were untouched. His version of events matched the physical evidence. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, and a mess that looked artificially created. His alibi checked out. He was on shift, and it was backed by records. Still, there were lingering doubts. Why hadn't he asked a family member or friend to check on Christa if she wasn't responding all night? Why did his emotional reaction seem so muted? And why were only weapons taken when other items of value were left behind? There was no formal charge, no concrete proof to suggest wrongdoing. But investigators weren't ready to rule anything out. They decided to scrutinize his statements further and cross-reference every detail with the evidence collected at the scene. While investigators were still verifying Cy Alexander's alibi, the case took a turn thanks to a statement from the Alexanders' neighbor, 69-year-old Mavis Rabel. She reported seeing Cy in the backyard the day before the incident, firing a handgun toward the pond. According to her, he was aiming at turtles, and the sound of the shots was clearly audible from her porch. This was the first concrete indication that Cy had access to a handgun. During his initial interview, he had only mentioned the missing rifle and shotgun, no mention of a pistol. For investigators, this was a critical inconsistency. The following day, a forensics team searched the area around the pond behind the Alexanders' home. Several 9mm shell casings were found scattered in the grass and near the water's edge. All the recovered evidence was sent to the crime lab for comparison with the casing found near Christa's body. The results came back conclusive. The marks on the primer and ejection pattern matched. The rounds had all been fired from the same gun. The weapon Cy used for target practice the day before was the same one used in the incident. During a second interview, Alexander changed his story. He now claimed that the pistol had already been sold the night before the tragedy. According to him, the buyer was a man named Steve, about 35 years old, white, average build. The supposed sale took place in front of their house, with Alexander saying he was paid $500 in cash. When asked for more details, Cy said Steve had driven an older pickup, possibly a Toyota, but he hadn't memorized the license plate. There were no documents, no witnesses, and no surveillance footage. A sweep of local residents, repair shops, and firearm dealers turned up nothing. No one matching that description could be found. With no supporting evidence and a direct ballistics match, the story of the mysterious sale started to fall apart. For the first time, investigators documented inconsistencies in Alexander's statements and officially listed him as a person requiring further scrutiny. With the ballistic evidence in hand, attention shifted to the couple's personal life. The first people to be interviewed were Christa's parents, Winfred and Patty Baker. They revealed that Christa was 17 weeks pregnant at the time of her passing. The pregnancy had been progressing normally, but in recent weeks, Christa seemed increasingly anxious. She had confided in her mother, saying that Cy had become withdrawn, irritable, and unwilling to discuss anything related to the baby. This lined up with what investigators had already noted about Cy's subdued behavior in the aftermath. Now, that emotional distance was echoed in testimony about long-standing issues in the marriage. Patty Baker went on to share that Christa had suspected Cy of being unfaithful about 2 months before her death. She hadn't named anyone, but believed it might be one of his co-workers. Christa noticed Cy staying late at work and coming home with no clear explanation. Despite her concerns, Christa had been committed to making the relationship work. She believed in her vows and viewed marriage as a sacred responsibility. Divorce, for her, was never an option. During interviews, investigators uncovered another crucial detail. The Alexanders were dealing with serious financial troubles. Cy was earning just $11 an hour as a paramedic for Acadian Ambulance Service. To qualify for a promotion, He needed to pass a certification exam, but he failed on his first try. Retaking the test required a fee the couple couldn't afford. At the time, Christa wasn't working, so the household depended entirely on Sai's income. Her parents had offered financial help more than once, but Sai always refused, insisting it was his responsibility to support his family on his own. According to Winfred Baker, in the months leading up to the tragedy, Christa started calling her parents more frequently, something she rarely did before. A few times, she asked for advice on how to encourage her husband without sparking arguments. To investigators, these insights were key. They painted a picture of a home under pressure, where Sai, weighed down by financial strain and emotional tension, may have been driven by a motive: the desire to escape a life he no longer felt in control of. The investigation shifted in a new direction. Police documented the following in the case file: pregnancy, 17 weeks, increasing strain in the relationship, possible infidelity, financial hardship. Now, investigators needed to find out whether the woman Christa had suspected actually existed, and what role, if any, she may have played in what happened. They turned their focus to Sai Alexander's workplace. Conversations with colleagues revealed he had a close relationship with a fellow paramedic, 26-year-old Allison Sharp, who also worked at Acadian Ambulance. In her interview, Sharp didn't deny the personal connection. In fact, she admitted the relationship continued even after Sai's wedding. She explained that it began long before the marriage, and that Sai often said he wasn't sure about his feelings for Christa. Allison said they would see each other during and after shifts, even staying in hotels together. One such meeting happened while Christa was away at a church retreat. Sai booked a room with a jacuzzi at the Callaway Inn in Baton Rouge, brought dishes from home, and prepared dinner. She confirmed that she knew he was married, but believed he was going through a difficult time and trying to figure himself out. He never mentioned that Christa was expecting. When asked about finances, Sharp said Sai often talked about money problems, his low pay, debts, and the cost of retaking his exam. Still, he was spending money on travel, gifts, and hotel stays. Investigators asked about dates. One of their last meetings happened less than 2 weeks before Christa's death. Allison recalled that Sai seemed depressed. He told her he was overwhelmed and felt like he was backed into a corner. Sharp fully cooperated with authorities. She provided receipts and even confirmed that after Christa's death, Sai gave her a DVD player, saying he no longer needed it. That same item had been listed by Sai as one of the things stolen from the home. Further investigation confirmed Allison Sharp had no involvement in the crime. She had a solid alibi for the night in question and showed no behavior suggesting otherwise. Although she was no longer a suspect, her testimony became a critical part of understanding the Alexanders' personal dynamic. Allison's story confirmed what investigators had begun to suspect. Cracks in the Alexanders' marriage had formed long before Christa's death. 3 key stressors came to light: infidelity, debt, and emotional burnout. It was here that investigators finally saw a possible motive, one that had been missing from the narrative until now. After matching the recovered shell casings with the firearm used, investigators brought Sai Alexander back in for another interview. This time, his story changed. Faced with mounting contradictions, Sai admitted that the day of Christa's death hadn't unfolded the way he'd previously described. He claimed that on the morning of June 28th, he had fallen asleep on the couch in the living room. Christa woke him up later than usual, and he was in a rush because his shift at the ambulance service started that evening. According to him, he picked up the handgun to show her how it worked and accidentally pulled the trigger. Sai insisted he hadn't meant to harm her, that the gun discharged by mistake. When he realized she was unresponsive, he said he panicked. Instead of calling for help, fear took over, and he chose to cover it up. What followed was a step-by-step account. He described scattering items, opening drawers and jewelry boxes to make it look like a break-in. Then, he took 2 rifles and a DVD player to fake a theft. On his way to work, he said he threw the handgun and several personal items, Christa's jewelry and small belongings, out of the car, hoping to make it appear as though someone had fled in a hurry. Sy repeated that he never intended for Christa to lose her life, and maintained it had been a tragic accident. Investigators documented his confession, but added a note to the official record. Statement requires verification. What raised immediate skepticism was the nature of the wound. Christa had been shot in the back of the head, with clear signs of soot on the skin, indicating the shot had been fired from extremely close range. Forensic experts noted that under such circumstances, an accidental discharge was highly unlikely. They also scrutinized Sy's behavior after the incident. Instead of trying to help or alert emergency services, he spent time staging a fake robbery and then calmly left for work. The front door was left open. Christa's body remained on the floor until morning. These choices didn't align with the actions of someone who had just experienced a tragic accident. Based on these findings, investigators concluded that Sy's confession wasn't a sign of genuine remorse, but a calculated attempt to reduce potential consequences. Through months of investigation, police pieced together the full picture. A failing marriage weighed down by betrayal and financial hardship, culminating in a calculated act disguised as a misfortune. Following Sy Alexander's confession, the investigation entered its final phase. Detectives traced the route he claimed to have taken the night of Christa's death, searching the area where he said he had discarded the weapon. Hidden in the brush along the roadside, they recovered a 9mm handgun, the very one used in the fatal shooting. Forensic testing confirmed it. Ballistics matched the casing found near Christa's body, as well as the ones collected from the pond area where Sy had been seen firing the weapon the day before the incident. It was the final, irrefutable piece of evidence tying him directly to the crime. The St. Tammany Parish District Attorney's Office brought 3 charges against Alexander. Second-degree murder for the loss of Christa Alexander's life. First-degree unlawful termination of a pregnancy for the death of the unborn child. Obstruction of justice for staging the fake burglary in an attempt to mislead investigators. The conclusion of the investigation made one thing clear. This act wasn't an accident. The nature of the wound, the efforts to throw off the investigation, and the deliberate disposal of the weapon pointed to a calculated and intentional action. A trial was set for August 2009, but before proceedings began, Alexander pled guilty and accepted a deal from prosecutors. His admission led to the dismissal of the jury, and the case proceeded directly to sentencing. In August 2009, the St. Tammany Parish Court handed down its verdict: 55 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence encompassed all 3 charges. Christa's parents were present in the courtroom. Her father, Pastor Winfred Baker, gave a brief statement to the press, revealing that the family had already chosen to forgive Alexander, long before his identity as the perpetrator was confirmed. Local outlets quoted his words, "We forgave him before we even knew who it was. We believe forgiveness is the only path that brings peace." Christa lived by that faith, and we must continue to live by it, too. After the proceedings, the Baker family returned to their ministry work in Abita Springs. They continued the missionary programs their daughter once helped lead. And so ends a story that began as a portrait of a young, faithful couple and ended in heartbreak, with the strength of the parents' faith becoming their only refuge. For the investigators, this case remains one of those rare instances where the motive wasn't born in an instant, but grew slowly, over time, hidden beneath a surface of outward respectability. For the Baker family, it's a lasting reminder of what Christa believed with all her heart, that forgiveness is stronger than revenge.